You're staring at a blank screen, right? Just a blinking cursor. And there is this creeping, almost icy sensation in the back of your mind that everything you know how to do, like all the skills you've spent a decade perfecting, might be entirely automated in, I don't know, about 3 years.
Yeah, that's a really common feeling right now.
Right. You've read the headlines, you've seen the tech demos, and if you are being completely honest with yourself, you're just exhausted. You're so tired of running just to stay in the exact same place in your career.
Oh, absolutely. It's a profound, almost collective nervous system dysregulation that's happening across the modern workforce right now.
Hmm.
I mean, people are carrying this really heavy, silent panic,
Yeah, a silent panic.
and they disguise it. They disguise it as ambition, they disguise it as hustle, but fundamentally, it is just the terror of obsolescence.
And that is the exact collision we are unpacking today. We're ripping past the generic surface level advice about, how to use artificial intelligence to write better emails. We're going way deeper.
Good, because that surface stuff doesn't really help anyone survive this shift.
Exactly. So we're going to look in the mirror today. We are taking the concept of large language models, LLMs, and smashing it directly into the psychology of the growth mindset. We're going to deconstruct what true adaptation actually looks like and how these generative AI tools act as the ultimate psychological catalyst.
And crucially, why that relentless hustle culture you see worshipped in big tech companies is, more often than not, a very elaborate, highly compensated disguise for deep-seated fear.
I love that framing. So if you are walking around with that sense of information overload or that creeping dread that you aren't adapting fast enough to this new technological era, our goal today is to give you a very specific psychological toolkit.
Right, we want to map out exactly how to take that raw, corrosive career anxiety and physically transform it into pure, childlike curiosity.
Right.
Because honestly, that transition is not a luxury anymore. It's really the only reliable survival mechanism we have left.
Let's dive right in. Let's start at the very beginning of this transformation. Because before you get to the anxiety, there's usually this highly specific, overwhelming spark. I've felt this, and I know millions of others have too.
The AI discovery moment.
Yes, it's that visceral reaction you have when you first sit down with an advanced LLM and you type in a highly specific, maybe even embarrassingly rudimentary question about a complex topic. And the system acts as this omniscient, tireless, completely non-judgmental tutor.
It's wild the first time it happens.
It really is. It doesn't just give you a link to a wiki page. It breaks the concept down to your exact level of comprehension. And the resulting feeling isn't just, oh, that's neat. It feels like an explosion in your brain. It feels like ecstasy.
Yeah, ecstasy is a great word for it. That intense reaction is actually a potent, highly specific neurochemical and psychological cocktail. You are basically experiencing the collision of a nascent growth mindset with what psychologists call mastery motivation and a massive cognitive epiphany.
Okay, unpack that for me. Cognitive epiphany.
So to truly understand why your brain lights up like a pinball machine in that moment, we have to look at the historical friction of learning. For the entirety of human history up to this point, acquiring top-tier, instant personalized feedback was prohibitively expensive.
Right. Expensive in terms of hiring a private tutor, buying textbooks, paying university tuition.
Well, yes, financial cost is one layer,
Yeah.
but the much heavier cost was time and, crucially, social capital.
Social capital, like your reputation.
Exactly. We operate with a finite reservoir of social capital in our professional and personal lives. Think about a junior software engineer who doesn't understand a complex legacy code base.
Okay.
Every single time they roll their chair over to a senior developer and ask, hey, can you explain this algorithm to me? They are spending that capital.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because there is a massive anxiety tied to that resource limitation. You are sitting there calculating, is this a stupid question? Am I asking too many questions this week?
Right. Is this senior developer going to mention in my performance review that I need too much hand-holding?
That is so relatable. And that calculation creates immense friction.
It stops the learning process cold. People will literally choose to remain ignorant rather than risk the social vulnerability of exposing what they don't know. But the introduction of an LLM shatters that barrier completely.
Because the AI doesn't judge you.
Exactly. The AI does not judge your ignorance. It doesn't get frustrated if you ask it to explain the exact same concept a fourth time. It doesn't look at its watch.
So the anxiety of resource limitation just evaporates. You are alone in a room and you have infinite access to patience.
Yes. And when that social anxiety vanishes, a profound shift happens in your cognitive framework. The internal monologue shifts entirely from a question of fixed identity. Who am I, and am I about to be exposed as an imposter?
The worst feeling.
Totally. It shifts from that to a pure question of process. How do I systematically deconstruct and learn this? The unknown is no longer this humiliating obstacle designed to prove your incompetence. It transforms into, like a hunted prey. You realize you actually have the tools to capture it.
Let's ground this in the psychology, specifically Albert Bandura's work on self-efficacy, because that feels like the engine driving this entire phenomenon.
Oh, Bandura's concept of self-efficacy is foundational here. And it's important to clarify that it's fundamentally different from generic self-confidence or self-esteem.
How so?
Self-efficacy is the targeted, specific belief in your own capacity to execute the behaviors necessary to produce a specific performance attainment. It is the belief that if I apply effort to this specific problem, I have the capacity to solve it.
Right, so it's not I'm a great person, it's I can figure out this math problem.
Exactly. So discovering this AI tutor acts as an instantaneous outer brain that just maxes out that self-efficacy.
Suddenly, a task that felt like climbing Everest in flip-flops, like learning quantitative finance from scratch or understanding the math behind quantum mechanics, or writing a Python script when you've literally only ever used Excel, suddenly all of that feels entirely conquerable.
And that right there is the cognitive epiphany. You realize the friction of getting stuck has been removed. You're anticipating a learning experience where you won't spend 3 agonizing days hunting for a missing semicolon in your code, or banging your head against an incomprehensible paragraph in a textbook.
It's like you can see the finish line before you even start.
Yes. You are experiencing the pre-computation of the flow state.
Ah, the flow state. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept of being completely immersed, energized, and hyper-focused on a task where the challenge perfectly matches your skill level.
That's the one. And here's the neurochemical secret behind it. Just the expectation of entering that flow state, the sheer anticipation of having your roadblocks instantly cleared away, that triggers a massive release of dopamine.
Really? Just the expectation?
Yeah, because dopamine isn't just a reward chemical. It's a motivation and anticipation chemical. That is the ecstasy you feel. It is your brain rewarding you for finding a frictionless path to mastery.
Okay, I hear that, but I have to push back hard on this idea of a frictionless path, because it sounds like we're describing a video game cheat code. You punch in up, up, down, down, and you skip the boss fight entirely.
Right.
But anyone who uses LLMs daily knows they are deeply flawed. They hallucinate wildly, they will confidently hand you broken code, or invent historical facts, or just completely gaslight you about a mathematical proof.
They absolutely do.
So when the AI fails, doesn't that shatter the self-efficacy? Doesn't the cheat code glitch out and completely ruin the flow state?
It absolutely glitches out, but, and this is key, that glitch is the most important part of the process. How a user reacts to that exact moment, the AI hallucination, is the ultimate diagnostic tool to separate a person with a fixed mindset from a person with a true growth mindset.
Okay, let's unpack this. What are the litmus tests for that?
Let's look at the first litmus test, the reaction to errors. Picture a user who fundamentally operates with a fixed mindset. They experience that initial burst of ecstasy when they discover the AI, but their motivation is purely utilitarian.
They just want the result, not the learning.
Exactly. They want a magic wand to bypass the work. So they ask the LLM to write a complex script for a database migration. The AI hallucinates, it uses a deprecated library, and the code crashes spectacularly.
We've been there.
We all have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fixed mindset user experiences an immediate spike in cortisol. They get angry. They dismiss the tool entirely, claiming this thing is garbage, it's useless, it's just a hype bubble, and they quit.
Because they never actually wanted to learn the database migration in the first place. They wanted the machine to do it so they could go watch Netflix.
Exactly.
When the machine proves fallible, their lack of intrinsic motivation is just totally exposed.
Now, contrast that with the growth mindset user encountering the exact same broken code. Instead of viewing the hallucination as a betrayal, they view it as a puzzle. It becomes a prompt for critical thinking and cross-verification.
They don't just give up.
No, they talk back to the machine. They say, wait, this line of code contradicts the logic you provided in the previous step. If this library is deprecated, what is the modern equivalent? They treat the LLM as a highly capable but fallible sparring partner.
They retain their agency. They're still the director of the learning process.
That framing completely changes the utility of the tool. You aren't consulting an infallible oracle on a mountaintop. You're arguing with a brilliant but slightly erratic colleague.
I love that. A brilliant but erratic colleague.
Which leads directly into the second litmus test, and this one is far more insidious. It's called the illusion of competence.
Oh boy, this one hits entirely too close to home.
It gets all of us.
Yes.
It is the trap of feeling like you know something simply because the AI explained it to you so eloquently.
Yes.
You ask a complex question about macroeconomics. The LLM generates a perfectly structured, beautifully formatted, highly digestible 5-paragraph essay explaining the relationship between interest rates and inflation. You read it. You nod along.
You feel so smart.
Right. You feel a huge surge of intellectual satisfaction.
Right.
And you close your laptop, genuinely believing you have mastered the concept.
But you haven't done anything. You just get the dopamine hit of mastery without having endured the actual neurological friction of building the neural pathways. It's like intellectual empty calories.
That's a perfect way to put it. It is the passive consumption of knowledge, brilliantly disguised as the active acquisition of skill. True growth mindset demands the painful recognition that reading a flawless explanation is not the same as possessing the capability.
So how do you pass this second test?
To pass this litmus test, you must use the AI's output merely as a springboard for actual, messy, frustrating practice. You have to shut off the screen and try to explain the macroeconomic concept out loud to an empty room.
Or write the code from memory on a blank text document.
Exactly. The AI provides the ecstasy and the map, but the learner still has to walk the territory.
Man, it reminds me of the gap between reading a biomechanical breakdown of a golf swing and actually hitting a golf ball, which actually transitions perfectly into one of the most fascinating social dynamics we need to discuss today.
The rejection dynamic.
Yeah. Let's say you navigate these tests. You experience the ecstasy, you use the AI as a sparring partner, you actually put in the practice, and you experience a massive leap in your own capability. The immediate, deeply human instinct is to share this fire you've discovered.
Of course. You want to help your friends.
Right. But when you try to hand it to the people around you, they often look at you like you have two heads. They think you're completely unhinged.
This is the classic, painful dilemma of early adoption colliding with cognitive mismatch.
Let's use the badminton example from the source material because I think it paints the picture so well. Consider a weekend badminton player. They're struggling with their game. Maybe their backhand clear is incredibly weak. So they go home, they input all their physical parameters, their paddle weight, their string tension, and a description of their swing mechanics into an LLM. And the AI spits out a brilliant, customized, highly technical breakdown of their wrist pronation and footwork.
And it actually works.
Exactly. The player takes this advice to the driveway, practices it, and fixes their backhand overnight. They are vibrating with excitement. So the next Saturday, they go to the gym, pull their badminton buddies aside, and say, "You have to try this AI. It completely reprogrammed my mechanics."
And how do the friends react?
They just stare blankly, they shrug, they might even mock the idea. And the person who discovered the AI feels a profound sense of rejection and frustration in that moment.
It feels like you are offering a starving person a feast, and they are just swatting the plate away.
Yeah. And the immediate internal monologue is highly judgmental. You're standing there thinking, are my friends just lazy? Do they enjoy being mediocre? Do they fundamentally lack a growth mindset?
And that is the trap. Judging those friends as lacking a growth mindset is a massive psychological trap. In fact, reacting with that kind of rigid judgment is evidence of your own hidden fixed mindset.
Wait, really? How is it my fixed mindset?
Because you aren't adapting to them. We have to examine this through the lens of what's called cognitive load and the tool threshold.
Okay, break down the tool threshold for me. Why does a badminton player reject a brilliant tool?
You have to analyze the fundamental nature of the activity. Badminton, like any sport, is profoundly embodied. The knowledge lives in muscle memory, in proprioception, in the physical sensation of the racket cutting through the air, and in split-second, nonverbal spatial calculations.
It's all physical.
Right. So for your friends on the court, the idea of injecting a highly logical, text-based, abstract computational system into an embodied kinetic activity feels violently inefficient.
It feels like trying to learn how to swim by reading a spreadsheet.
Precisely. When you enthusiastically pitch AI to them, their brain immediately calculates the cognitive load. They envision having to sit down, type out paragraphs describing their physical flaws, read dense biomechanical text, and then somehow translate those abstract words into the snap of a wrist while a shuttlecock is flying at their face at 100 miles an hour.
Okay, when you put it like that, it sounds insane. The cognitive load is overwhelmingly high compared to their existing learning models.
Exactly. Now, we do need to separate the people on that court, though, because not all rejection is the same. There are genuinely people with a fixed mindset in that group.
True.
You will always have the purely fixed mindset player. They play the sport entirely to consume the joy of the activity. They want to sweat for an hour, banter with their friends, drink a beer afterward, and go home. They possess zero internal desire to evolve their skill level. They are happily anchored to their current plateau.
And frankly, we need to normalize that. Not every hobby has to be an aggressively optimized grind for perfection.
Complete optimization of every waking hour is a pathology, not a virtue. For the purely fixed mindset player, the AI is useless, simply because the engine of desire isn't turned on. However, the majority of your friends likely fall into a different category, the pragmatic mindset.
Okay, so how does the pragmatic mindset operate in this scenario?
These individuals do want to win. They hate missing the shot. They want to get better. But their entire paradigm of learning is contextual, immediate, and socially driven.
Meaning they learn by doing.
Yes, they learn by having a slightly superior player stand next to them on the court, physically grab their elbow, physically rotate their shoulder, and say, hold it like this. They require immediate kinesthetic social feedback.
So when they reject the LLM, they aren't rejecting the concept of improvement. They are rejecting a tool that represents a massive, unfamiliar friction in their established learning paradigm.
Exactly. So if you were standing there aggressively demanding that your pragmatic friends abandon their kinesthetic learning style to read AI prompts, you are demanding conformity, not growth.
Oh, that's a brilliant distinction. Conformity versus growth.
A genuine growth mindset applies not just to acquiring the backhand, but to solving social and communication friction. You must treat their apathy as a fascinating new problem to solve, rather than a moral failing on their part.
This requires a highly tactical approach, though. How do you actually bridge the gap between a text-based AI and an embodied pragmatic learner?
You utilize a strategy of demonstration over persuasion. It involves a four-step psychological operation.
Let's hear.
Step one is radical internal application. You stop preaching immediately, you take the AI's advice, you go home, and you drill your footwork in silence. You improve your smash, you let the results manifest physically.
You are building an undeniable physical evidence base, and you don't say a word about the software.
Not a word. Step two requires patience. You simply wait for the ecosystem to notice. And they will. Human beings are acutely attuned to sudden shifts in the social hierarchy or skill distribution within a group.
Yeah, if someone suddenly gets way better, everyone notices.
Right. You start returning smashes that used to blow past you. You start winning games you used to lose. Inevitably, the pragmatic learners will approach you. They will ask, what changed? Did you hire a private coach?
And boom, you have successfully manufactured an information gap that they are now intrinsically motivated to close. They are asking for the tool rather than you forcing it on them.
That is step three, rebranding the tool. When they ask, you do not launch into a lecture about neural networks or large language models. You lower the perceived cognitive load.
How?
You frame the AI as your private strategist. You make it sound elite, highly tailored, yet entirely accessible. You say, oh, I've been using this digital strategist to analyze my swing.
Digital strategist. I love that. It totally strips away the sci-fi weirdness of AI. Which brings us to the kill shot, step 4. You have to prove the utility entirely within their context.
Right on the court. The next time that pragmatic friend misses a shot and groans in frustration about their footing, you don't offer advice. You pull your phone out right there, open the chat window, and ask the strategist to provide 3 bullet points on fixing lateral court movement.
Wow.
You read the results aloud. You take this abstract, terrifying concept of AI, and you instantly compress it into the visceral, immediate thrill of helping them win the very next point. You translate data into dopamine.
You literally speak their language. I want to take this dynamic, the lonely pursuit of mastery and the friction with the surrounding environment, and transplant it from a weekend hobby into the highest stakes arena most of us operate in, the corporate career path.
Yes. Let's look at that.
Because the tension we just described on the badminton court becomes infinitely more severe when your livelihood is on the line.
The corporate arena is where the theoretical concepts of growth mindset are tested against the brutal realities of fatigue, peer pressure, and survival. Let's look at the phenomenon of secret, proactive skill acquisition.
Okay, picture a mid-level software engineer at a massive tech conglomerate. Their current role is entirely domestic. They speak their native language at work, their performance reviews are stellar, and their daily output is highly valued. There is absolutely no external pressure on them to change.
They're comfortable.
Exactly. But they look at the macroeconomic trends, they look at the trajectory of your industry, and they realize that 3, 5, or 10 years down the line, if they want to access the highest levels of global management, their lack of fluency in spoken English is going to be a hard ceiling.
What you are describing requires a rare psychological combination. Proactive coping paired with deliberate practice.
Because most people wouldn't do anything about it.
No, the vast majority of the workforce facing that exact same realization defaults to the ostrich mentality. They acknowledge the future threat, but because it doesn't impact tomorrow morning's stand-up meeting, they defer the anxiety. They tell themselves, I'll cross that bridge when I get assigned to an international project.
Which is, logically, a guaranteed path to failure. By the time the international project is offered, the window to acquire the language proficiency has already closed. The opportunity goes to the person who is already prepared.
The proactive coper understands this. So this engineer initiates a grueling, invisible daily routine. They wake up an hour early, they put on an English language business podcast, and they engage in shadowing.
For anyone who hasn't tried language shadowing, it is a uniquely torturous form of deliberate practice.
It really is.
You listen to a native speaker, and you attempt to repeat their words out loud in real time, matching their pacing, their intonation, their vocabulary, and their accent simultaneously.
It forces your brain to process auditory input and vocal output simultaneously. It is exhausting. But the fact that this engineer chooses to endure this daily, without a manager forcing them to, reveals a profound core belief. They genuinely believe in adult neuroplasticity.
Meaning they think their brain can actually change.
Yes. They reject the fixed mindset notion that I'm too old to learn a language or my brain is already wired. They view their neural pathways and their vocal cords as malleable hardware that can be continuously upgraded.
But let's talk about the emotional toll of that, because embracing neuroplasticity sounds highly clinical. In reality, shadowing requires embracing deep daily humiliation.
Oh, absolutely.
When you shadow, you hear the flawless, confident native speaker in your headphones, and you simultaneously hear your own voice out loud, stuttering, mangling the vowels, losing the rhythm, sounding like a confused child.
It forcefully triggers intense, unavoidable feelings of incompetence. To subject yourself to that voluntarily requires a fundamental reframing of identity. The fixed mindset views feeling stupid as a permanent indictment of their worth. They avoid it at all costs.
But the growth
mindset views feeling stupid as the mandatory temporary toll booth on the highway to mastery. They actively schedule an hour every single morning to look and feel incompetent in the privacy of their bedroom so they can be devastatingly competent in public 3 years later. They are holding their present self to the rigorous standards of their future self.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. At what point does practicing in your bedroom become a sophisticated form of hiding?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Let's use a martial arts analogy. You can stand in front of a mirror in your garage for 3 years perfecting your forms. Your punches look beautiful, your kicks are textbook. But if you never step into a sparring ring, if you never take a punch to the jaw from a live opponent, you are not a fighter. You are a dancer.
That's entirely true.
So does perfectly shadowing a podcast actually prepare this engineer for the chaotic reality of a high-stakes global conference call?
That analogy cuts right to the heart of the issue. Shadowing in your bedroom is merely the flight simulator. You must use the simulator to build the baseline muscle memory without crashing the actual plane. But if you refuse to ever leave the simulator, you have fundamentally failed to grow.
You have to face the real thing eventually.
The isolated practice must eventually, inevitably, be violently exposed to the real world. You have to transition to the battlefield.
What does the battlefield look like for this engineer?
It looks like intentionally seeking out micro-ecosystems of high friction. It means stepping out of the bedroom and joining a Toastmasters club where they have to speak in front of strangers. It means volunteering to present a highly technical architecture review to their team entirely in English. It means purposefully choosing to initiate a voice call with an international colleague on Slack instead of relying on the safety of async text messages.
It is the willingness to bear the friction of real-time communication.
Exactly. The ultimate test of their growth is not cleanly reciting a podcast. The ultimate test is sitting in a video conference with 8 brilliant engineers, hearing a thick, unfamiliar accent propose a complex solution, and possessing the psychological fortitude to interrupt the momentum of the meeting and say, "Excuse me, I did not fully understand that. Can you clarify the second point?"
Oh man, interrupting a meeting like that is so hard.
It is. Because it's the ability to take a highly complex technical concept and synthesize it into clear, simple English vocabulary on the fly while under immense social pressure. The simulator builds the capacity. The friction of the battlefield forges the actual competence.
But this proactive, long-term preparation immediately runs into a massive, heavily armored wall in the corporate world. Investing in your future self sounds incredibly noble in a vacuum. But in reality, you exist in a social ecosystem that demands constant justification for how you spend your time.
Right, your coworkers are watching you.
We have to talk about what happens when this long-term, curiosity-driven learning violently collides with the hyper-optimized, short-term, KPI-obsessed culture of modern business.
This collision produces what we can identify as the KPI trap, and it is beautifully illustrated by the scenario of this CFA student.
Let's paint the picture. You have an employee working at a major tech firm. Their background is in computer science. Their daily job is writing code. Out of pure intellectual curiosity and a desire to understand the broader mechanics of capitalism, they decide to study for the CFA, the Chartered Financial Analyst exams.
Which is an incredibly hard exam.
The CFA is notorious. It requires hundreds and hundreds of hours of grueling study spanning economics, portfolio management, and ethical standards. So they are grinding through these massive textbooks in the break room after hours. A colleague, another software engineer, walks in, sees the books, and asks a highly cynical, incredibly revealing question.
Yeah.
You spent all this time studying finance, but have you actually made any money from it?
That single cutting question is the perfect crystallization of the fixed mindset infected by an addiction to instant feedback. We have to dissect the psychology of that colleague.
What's going on in their head?
In their mental framework, human effort has zero intrinsic value. Value is dictated entirely by immediate monetization or immediate corporate validation. If your late-night studying isn't moving the needle on this quarter's key performance indicators or putting a direct cash bonus into your bank account by Friday, it is categorized as a foolish waste of time.
It also reveals a deeply rigid view of human identity. The colleague is effectively saying, you are a software engineer. Your identity is defined by the syntax of the code you write. Why are you trespassing in the domain of finance? Stay in your designated lane. It's a mechanism to enforce the status quo.
It is entirely a defensive mechanism. By mocking the CFA student's lack of immediate financial return, the colleague validates their own decision to go home and watch television instead of expanding their mind.
Wow. Yeah, they're protecting their own ego.
But the CFA student is operating in a completely different temporal reality. They are not studying finance so they can quit their tech job and become a junior analyst at Goldman Sachs. They're playing a multi-decade game of cognitive compound interest.
Cognitive compound interest. I like that.
They're actively adding entirely new dimensions to how they perceive reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Break that down for me. What does a new cognitive dimension actually look like for a software engineer? Why does learning finance make them a better coder?
It fundamentally elevates their perspective from the microscopic to the macroscopic. An engineer who only knows code understands how to build a highly efficient tool. An engineer who understands code and finance understands why the tool needs to exist in the first place.
So they see the bigger picture.
Exactly. When they learn how to read a 10Q financial report, when they deeply understand metrics like earnings per share or volume-weighted average price, their entire relationship with their employer shifts. They are no longer just looking at a JIRA ticket.
They aren't just a cog anymore.
Right. They can look at the company's resource allocation and understand the executive strategy behind it. They can accurately assess the true underlying value of their own stock options. When they are tasked with building a pricing algorithm, they understand the market mechanics that dictate the variables. They transition from being a bricklayer to an architect who understands the economics of the entire city.
This highlights the critical difference between two types of career survival strategies: defensive security versus redundancy security.
This distinction is paramount for anyone navigating a volatile, layoff-prone industry. Defensive security is the legacy mindset. It is the belief that safety comes from shrinking yourself to fit perfectly into your assigned box.
It sounds like as long as I keep my head down, hit my specific metrics, don't make waves, and the company doesn't fire me, I am safe.
Yes, and it is entirely reliant on the mercy of the external environment. Your safety is dictated by your manager's mood, the whims of the board of directors, and the macroeconomic climate. You have tied your boat to a single dock, and if that dock collapses, you drown.
That's terrifying. What's the alternative?
Redundancy security.
Yeah.
And it is completely internalized. It is the belief that my value is not tethered to this specific job title or this specific tech stack or even this specific industry. My abilities are constantly evolving, intersecting, and expanding.
Because you possess interdisciplinary cognitive capital.
Exactly. Even if my entire department is automated tomorrow, I can pivot instantly and provide value in a different domain. You are building an internal, portable fortress that travels with you regardless of who signs your paycheck.
So, practically speaking, if you are the one studying the CFA or grinding through a new language, and you are confronted by that cynical colleague who demands to know the immediate ROI of your curiosity, how do you respond? Do you try to explain the concept of cognitive compound interest to them?
The psychological advice here is stark. Do not engage in an argument about immediate monetization. If you try to justify your long-term, dimension-expanding learning using their short-term, KPI-obsessed metrics, you have already lost.
You fall into their trap.
You get pulled down into their fixed mindset gravity well. You end up trying to prove the value of architecture to a bricklayer who only cares about today's quota. The correct response is quiet pragmatism. You smile, you give a non-committal answer, and you recognize internally that you are running a completely different marathon.
You do not need the permission of a fixed mindset peer to build your redundancy security.
Never.
Let me pause here and pivot to a darker, much more challenging question. A question for you, and frankly, a question for the listener sitting at home right now. We are talking about sacrificing evenings to grind through finance textbooks. We are talking about waking up before dawn to agonize over language shadowing. We are talking about optimizing a weekend badminton game with advanced algorithm.
A lot of work.
It is. So, is this relentless, inescapable drive to optimize every facet of our existence just the final toxic evolution of hustle culture? Is the growth mindset actually just a highly sanitized, socially acceptable psychological tool for self-exploitation? Are we just weaponizing our own curiosity to make ourselves more efficient pogs in a hyper-capitalist machine?
That is the shadow side of this entire conversation, and it is a terrifyingly valid concern. It is incredibly easy for the core tenets of the growth mindset to be hijacked and weaponized by the environment.
How does that hijacking happen?
In highly competitive, hyper-optimized corporate environments, the pure concept of a growth mindset gets mutated into a false growth mindset. It becomes a toxic, exhausting soup driven entirely by a paralyzing fear of being left behind and an obsession with measurable output. True growth mindset at its very core is profoundly anti-utilitarian.
Anti-utilitarian. Expand on that. If it's not useful, why do it?
Because true growth is fueled by intrinsic motivation. It is the pure, almost childlike joy of exploring a concept simply because it is fascinating. It possesses a high tolerance for the useless. It allows you to wander, to explore dead ends, to fail spectacularly without your core identity shattering.
And false growth.
False growth, however, is fueled entirely by anxiety. It is highly performative. It demands flawless self-exploitation. If you are not actively monetizing or optimizing every second of your weekend, it punishes you with immense guilt. It prioritizes the illusion of competence, making sure you post your 100-day coding streak on LinkedIn, making sure your certificates are visible, while quietly avoiding the unglamorous, terrifying work of actual exploration.
Wow. This distinction is so critical that we need a way to measure it. How do we know which engine is driving this? How do we separate true curiosity from defensive anxiety?
We can use a precise 6-point psychological diagnostic test. It acts as a mirror. I want anyone listening to mentally score themselves as we go through these indicators.
Okay, I'm going to score myself live right now. And to be honest, I am bracing myself. Let's run the diagnostic.
Indicator number 1, core emotion. When you sit down to engage in your learning, whether it's writing code, reading finance, or practicing a language, what is the dominant feeling in your body? Do you experience flow? Do you feel that genuine hit of dopamine and excitement when you finally crack a difficult concept? Or is the overwhelming dominant emotion a heavy, exhausting sense of relief that you simply checked off your daily task and managed not to fall behind today?
Oof. Relief is definitely driving the bus some days. Okay, what's indicator number 2?
Indicator number 2, reaction to failure. When you hit a plateau or when you completely fail to grasp a concept, how do you talk to yourself in the privacy of your own mind? Do you immediately analyze it as an external technical problem to solve, saying, okay, the pacing of this podcast is too fast, I need to slow the audio down by 20%?
Right.
Or do you instantly spiral into catastrophic self-flagellation? Do you say, I am inherently stupid, I'm never going to grasp this, I'm going to be obsolete and laid off in 6 months?
Yeah, the catastrophic spiral is real. All right, indicator number 3, tolerance for the useless.
Imagine you are strictly studying for an important professional certification. While reading, you click a link and accidentally stumble down a massive Wikipedia rabbit hole about the collapse of medieval currency or the migration patterns of Antarctic krill.
Sounds like a fun afternoon.
Do you allow yourself to enjoy the detour? Do you feel enriched by absorbing seemingly random, disconnected knowledge? Or do you experience a spike of panic, berate yourself for wasting precious optimized time, and frantically click back to your study guide?
I panic. I actively yell at myself for losing focus. Why is a tolerance for the useless so important?
Because true innovation and cognitive flexibility come from connecting disparate, seemingly useless fields of knowledge. If you only ever consume highly optimized linear information, your brain becomes rigid. You lose the ability to make lateral leaps.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, indicator number 4, goal anchor.
Where is your psychological anchor dropped? Are you strictly comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, finding quiet satisfaction in your own incremental progress? Or is your anchor completely externalized?
Externalized how?
Are you thrown into a panic attack because you saw a 23-year-old on social media land a promotion you feel you deserve?
Yeah.
Is your goal internal mastery or external dominance?
Definitely guilty of the external dominance trap. Social media makes that almost inescapable. What's number 5?
Indicator number 5 is closely tied to the concept of the useless leisure state. Can you comfortably, genuinely waste time? Can you sit on the couch and play a video game or read a trashy sci-fi novel or simply stare out the window for 2 hours without a nagging, buzzing frequency of guilt in the back of your skull, whispering that your peers are pulling ahead of you while you rest?
I genuinely don't know anyone in my professional circle who can answer yes to that. Resting feels like a dereliction of duty. Which brings us to the final point, indicator number 6.
Indicator number 6, view of the self. How do you fundamentally conceptualize your own identity and your career trajectory? Do you view yourself as a seed, an organic entity that expects to grow, branch out in unpredictable directions, weather seasons of dormancy, and produce unique fruit? Or do you view yourself as a machine, a static collection of gears that must frantically apply oil and perform daily maintenance just to prevent yourself from rusting and being discarded in the next round of corporate layoffs?
Honestly, running through that diagnostic, I think I'm the machine covered in oil.
Yeah.
I think a massive percentage of my daily drive, the reason I read the books and do the deep dives, is pure, unadulterated panic disguised as ambition.
And that's a very common realization.
If someone realizes that their entire foundation is built on anxiety, are they doomed? Is it too late to build a true growth mindset?
You are absolutely not doomed. And this is where the psychology becomes deeply compassionate. It's completely biologically normal to start with fear. Fear is a primal, highly effective survival instinct. It is the jolt of adrenaline that gets you out of bed. It is the panic that forces you to open the textbook in the first place.
So it's okay to be scared.
Yes. You cannot shame yourself for experiencing fear. The magic, the actual psychological transformation, lies entirely in the transition.
How do you transition a machine covered in oil back into a seed? How do you move from terror to curiosity?
By practicing acute self-awareness while you work, while you are grinding away, initially driven by that anxiety, you must actively hunt for the 10% of the material that sparks a genuine, intrinsic connection.
Just 10%.
Just look for that fleeting moment where you read a block of code or understand a geopolitical dynamic, and you pause and think, wait, that is actually inherently beautiful. That is fascinating. You have to consciously, deliberately nurture those tiny sparks.
like blowing on a dying fire.
Exactly. You have to allow yourself to chase the rabbit hole for 10 minutes. Slowly, over time, you let the gravity of the fascination replace the push of the panic. You transition from being violently pushed from behind by the terror of obsolescence to being pulled forward by the gravity of pure interest.
That is a deeply reassuring framework, but I want to take this anxiety, this pervasive fear of falling behind, and aim our lens directly at the epicenter of it. If there is any place on Earth that should possess a pure, unadulterated growth mindset, it should be the elite hubs of global innovation.
You mean Silicon Valley?
Right, big tech. Silicon Valley. These are the cultures that invented the modern vocabulary of disruption, agile learning, and failing fast. But the reality on the ground in these places paints a completely different, almost paradoxical picture.
It is a massive paradox. In the highest echelons of elite big tech, growth mindset is largely deployed as a cheap, weaponized PowerPoint buzzword. It is a corporate value plastered on the walls of the cafeteria, but true, embodied practitioners of the mindset are exceedingly rare.
Why? How can the most innovative, future-facing companies on Earth be fundamentally hostile to true learning?
It comes down to the ruthless selection mechanisms. By their very nature, these massive companies filter for what we can call fixed mindset masters. Look at the typical profile of a new hire at a tech giant.
Valedictorians, elite schools?
Exactly. These are individuals who have spent the first 25 years of their lives completely dominating the standard answer game. They possess flawless, meticulously curated resumes. They spent months grinding lead code to perfectly execute highly standardized algorithmic interviews. Their entire lived experience has taught them that success equals flawlessly proving they already possess the correct answer.
They are professional test takers who have never been allowed to fail. And when you drop them into a corporate environment, they carry a massive psychological weight, the smart persona burden.
Precisely. When your entire identity, your immense compensation package, and your social status within your peer group are entirely predicated on you being the smartest person in the room, the prospect of publicly looking ignorant is paralyzing.
So they don't ask questions.
Admitting to a room full of your peers, I actually don't understand how this new generative AI architecture functions. Can someone explain the foundational logic to me? Feels akin to career suicide. It risks humiliation during peer reviews. It risks a downgrade in your performance rating, which directly obliterates your yearly bonus and stock vesting schedule.
The corporate incentive structure actively punishes vulnerability. So, as a survival mechanism, these brilliant minds retreat into defense. They flex with impenetrable jargon. They rigidly build fortresses around the specific domains they already dominate, guarding the gates to protect their KPIs.
And this defensive posturing manifests as profound cognitive arrogance. Think back to the badminton example, the small circle coldness where the pragmatic friends scoffed at the AI tool. That exact dynamic plays out in corporate boardrooms, but with multi-million-dollar stakes.
Right, people dismissing AI as a fad.
You will see senior engineers or product managers actively scoff at new AI frameworks, dismissing them as toys or fads, simply because they feel their current hard-won mental models are sufficient. To acknowledge the revolutionary power of the new tool is to acknowledge that the expertise they built their identity upon might be rapidly depreciating.
So what does this all mean? If the overarching culture is built on defensive arrogance and hiding ignorance, how do you spot the real deal? How do you identify the true workplace maverick, the person who actually embodies the growth mindset amidst the corporate posturing?
You look for the person displaying extreme internal psychological safety. The true maverick does not require external validation of their intelligence to feel worthy. Their ego is entirely decoupled from their immediate day-to-day output.
What does that decoupling look like in the middle of a crisis?
Picture a catastrophic project failure. A highly anticipated product launch goes live, the servers instantly crash under the load, the database corrupts, and the user metrics plummet. In the war room, the atmosphere is pure toxicity.
Everyone pointing fingers.
Everyone is panicking, frantically drafting emails to shift the blame, and trying to protect their performance reviews. In the middle of that chaos, the tree maverick is genuinely, visibly energized. They are staring at the error logs with bright eyes saying, "This is incredible data. We just exposed a critical blind spot in our architecture that has been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. Look at how it failed."
They aren't faking the enthusiasm. They're genuinely thrilled by the puzzle.
Because to the maverick, the multinational corporation is merely a stage. It is a highly funded laboratory provided to them to test their hypotheses and explore the absolute limits of their own human potential. The company is not their mother, and the job title is not their identity.
Wow.
The failure of the launch does not mean they are a failure as a human being. It simply means the specific system they built contained a fascinating flaw, and discovering that flaw is an intellectually thrilling event.
Which brings us to the ultimate, incredibly pragmatic question as we pull all these threads together. We've mapped the psychology, the social friction on the badminton court, the corporate KPI traps, and the paradox of Silicon Valley. But let's zoom out and look at the long game.
The 30-year marathon.
Exactly. Over the span of a 20 to 30-year career marathon, does playing the role of this vulnerable, curious maverick actually pay off? Or do the fixed mindset political operators, the ones who hoard knowledge, flex jargon, and perfectly manage their optics, ultimately win the game?
The underlying reality of modern economics is emphatic on this point. True growth mindset is the only reliable mechanism to break the mid-career ceiling. It's the only way to transition from being a highly paid senior cog in the machine into a visionary industry leader. And the mechanism behind this is anti-fragility against cycles.
Anti-fragility, Nassim Taleb's concept that some things don't just withstand chaos and shocks, they actively gain strength from them.
It's exactly. Fixed mindset professionals tie their entire worth and utility to a specific static framework. Consider an engineer who became a master of mobile app development in 2012. They built a massive moat around that specific skill. But when the technological paradigm violently shifts, when generative AI sweeps through the industry and reshapes how software is built, their protective moat becomes their grave.
Because they refuse to adapt.
They are too proud and too fundamentally terrified to admit they are beginners again. They fight the changing tide, insisting the old way is better because they do not know how to swim in the new ocean. Growth mindset individuals, however, experience zero ego death when the tools change.
They just pivot.
They enthusiastically clear their skill tree. They treat the paradigm shift as an exhilarating new puzzle to solve, pivoting instantly while their peers are paralyzed by denial.
It also completely dictates your ability to break through the management ceiling. We talked about the software engineer studying the CFA. Transitioning from an individual contributor to true executive leadership requires a massive elevation in cognitive dimensions.
Yes, the generalist versus the specialist.
The engineer who learned corporate finance out of pure intrinsic curiosity is the one who can suddenly sit at the table with the CEO and the CFO and discuss high-level resource strategy. They bridge the massive, lucrative gap between raw technical execution and commercial reality. The specialist, who only optimizes their specific lane, remains a specialist forever. The curious generalist becomes the leader.
And critically, when that generalist becomes a leader, their internal mindset dictates the culture of their entire department. A fixed mindset leader is driven by deep-seated insecurity. They require the constant validation of being the smartest person in the room.
Which sounds miserable for their team.
It is. Therefore, they subconsciously hire people who are slightly less competent than them, ensuring they are never intellectually threatened. They build a suffocating, blame-heavy ecosystem where every employee is terrified to propose a wild idea or make a mistake.
They guarantee mediocrity by outlawing failure.
A growth mindset leader engineers the exact opposite environment. They aggressively hunt for and hire people who are vastly smarter than them in specific domains. Their ego is not threatened by surrounding brilliance, it is activated by it.
That's real confidence.
They publicly celebrate team failures as iterative games. They look at a failed initiative and say, "Excellent, that hypothesis was wrong. What precise data did we extract from the failure, and how do we apply it to attempt B?" They can manufacture an environment of psychological safety for their team because they inherently possess it themselves.
And perhaps the most vital aspect for surviving a 30-year career marathon: avoiding the physiological devastation of burnout. If you are operating entirely on fear, if you are that machine desperately applying oil to avoid rust, your mid-30s will destroy you. The anxiety is biologically unsustainable.
Your adrenal system will eventually collapse under the weight of constant defensive posturing.
But if you manage to keep that childlike, intrinsic curiosity alive, something almost magical happens to your energy levels. Your side hobbies, your late-night Wikipedia rabbit holes, your grueling badminton drills, your language shadowing, they do not drain your battery.
No, they become your mental charging stations.
They serve as daily reminders that your brain is a living, incredibly plastic organism capable of endless wonder. That intrinsic motivation grants you a professional vitality that fear can never replicate.
That's really the heart of it.
We have covered immense psychological territory today. We have examined how large language models, despite their hallucinations and flaws, act as the ultimate catalyst for learning by utterly removing the social friction and anxiety of the unknown. We explored the painful reality of why your friends and colleagues might reject your evolution, and why you must navigate their apathy with pragmatic empathy and demonstration rather than rigid judgment.
Right.
We mapped the critical diagnostic difference between the toxic, exhausting hustle culture driven by sheer panic and the true curiosity-driven growth that actually sustains a human being over decades. And we saw why embracing the unknown, why being willing to look foolish in the short term, is your ultimate anti-fragile armor in an era of relentless disruption.
The core realization we want to leave you with is a reframing of what a career actually is. A career is not a multi-decade performance designed to prove to your peers, your parents, or your manager that you are a finished, flawless product. A career is simply a laboratory.
It's a laboratory.
It is a space provided to you to experiment, to fail, to iterate, and to discover exactly how far the limits of your own human potential can stretch.
That is a beautiful reframe. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to turn over in your mind as you navigate this new reality. We have spent this entire deep dive discussing AI as the ultimate tutor, a tool designed to help you acquire human skills faster and more efficiently. But if artificial intelligence continues its exponential trajectory and eventually reaches a point where it can flawlessly execute any skill on your behalf, if it can write the perfect code, draft the flawless financial model, perhaps even negotiate the complex business deal, does the growth mindset stop being about the painful struggle to acquire skills?
Mm.
Does it fundamentally evolve? Does the growth mindset eventually become the profound philosophical wisdom of choosing exactly which human experiences are actually worth having? Think about that the next time you were staring at a blinking cursor in a blank chat window.
It shifts the entire human paradigm from asking, how do I do this, to asking, why should I do
The
it?
ultimate question. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, embrace the friction, and we'll see you next time.